start by gathering your different shades that you're going to need. Instead of a black, I've gone for a brown because the black would be a little bit too harsh for this orange that I'm going to draw. And then I'm really using it quite, thickly. I'm really making sure that it's on quite heavy, and I'm overlapping. So each time I put a colour on, I'm overlapping. So first just get that sense of the gradient from dark to light that you want in your picture, and just check that the colours are right. You also might want to just kind of scribble with your oil pastel that you've got. Actually, in this case, I didn't have a white oil pastel handy, so I've used some chalk, which kind of worked just to blend in the other colours. The white, because obviously you've got the white of the paper, the white is more to just kind of blend together what you already have and maybe add on top afterwards, but it's quite difficult to add on top with the other colours anyway. And then I've just gone back in some more just to blend that even more, and use horizontal lines rather than vertical. I think it's a little bit easier, and especially to overlap those colours. So now you can go in with a pencil just to really lightly sketch the shape, and just be aware that if you are using a light colour, so if I was doing a lemon for example and I really was using whites and yellows, that pencil might actually dirty and muddy the white, so just be aware of that. So maybe you want to have a very light pencil line and actually rub out some of what you've got. And then so when you're drawing, when you start adding the colour, start with maybe one of your sort of medium colours there, and then just add where you see that tone, so your kind of mid-tones. You could even possibly get away with kind of colouring over the whole thing first and then building up your dark tones and then building up your light tones on top. But I'm just aware with my piece of chalk that I have instead of the pastel, it's not going to quite, the white isn't going to be able to go over everything else. So I do want to leave kind of areas for the white. You still want the oil pastels to be quite lightly applied at this stage. They will get deeper and deeper as you layer up. And remember to, especially with the light colours, to rub that excess kind of dirt from where you've used it on top of other oil pastels and stuff in the past, and just the way that the oil pastels are kept. They might be a little bit muddy. So now I'm using the yellow, and that's also just to deepen that orange, but I didn't want to use that orange really strong because it might be too dark. And of course you don't have to do everything exactly the way it looks in a photo. You can change it up if you want to. And so I'm not going to go straight in with the brown. I'm going to first use those orange shades so that the brown has got that orangey undertone rather than just being a completely different, completely different colour to the rest of it. But I do obviously want to create that shadow. So I'm adding the brown, but then I'm layering it, kind of like what you would do with colour pencils as well, just to build up layers gradually. And I'm going to want to blend from that darkest spot outwards slightly. And of course there is some texture to this as well, which I haven't quite added on yet. I'm just trying to create a kind of smooth sphere shape first, and then adding a little bit of texture in a bit. So I want to leave that white area slightly. I want it to just really be some light dots for texture at the end. So I'm just kind of dotting on my oil pastels rather than kind of rubbing them in now at this point. Be careful here just to pick out that shadow there. I'm literally just drawing a shadow. I'm not drawing around the shape at all. I'm just seeing where do I see that dark area, and that's what I'm drawing. I'm not trying to think too much about what it is, the fact that it's a cylinder. And here I'm just adding on more of that texture now, so really just dotting that on. I'm using the brown a little bit just where there's that darker side on the left hand side, and now I'm switching back to that darker orange just to bring out a little bit more of that texture. So for the shadow here, I'm mainly using grey because that's what I see in the picture. The way that I was drawing this was slightly wonky, so that's why it kind of looks a little bit funny. I need to turn the picture around slightly. But as you can see, it's quite a dark grey, but I'm going to go with what looks right for my drawing as well. I haven't necessarily drawn the orange, very harsh, so I don't want the shadow to look too harsh either. I'm just using that really quite thick, that white there, just to actually bring out that texture of the orange. I'm just kind of using it, blending it out a little bit. I'm also using that white over things where it's looking kind of grainy and you can see too much of the texture of the paper. So you actually use that white to blend with. And if you look at that shadow, you can see that there's actually a little bit of that orange reflecting onto the surface, or that shiny table or whatever it is, that you can see it's actually slightly orange. So I'm just going to kind of exaggerate that slightly. And then even with that brown, because I really want to get that, the brown actually isn't on the orange itself, that brown there is really on the table. So then I'm using that grey over the top because I don't want it to be as bright as the orange, but I do want to have that little bit of a hint. So remember about those undertones, like what we did on the orange as well.